Okay, so the next thing to do, now that we've got our API working here, we're going to want to do a feathers application. So, to start that off, we're going to use feathers generate. Feathers, I think. Oh. Yeah, 2.3.9. So there's a 3.0 out, but I'm using 2.3.9 right now, which is what I'm used to. I'll make another video for 3.0 later. But feathers, first of all, I want to put my React example into the project. So we have this one running here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, and then I'm going to move. I'm going to make a directory, feathers project. Actually, let's go ahead and add this to the repo as well. So we'll do, I'm going to go add my repo, and then I'll be right back. All right, so cd into the React app, and I'll do a git init, and then I will git add remote, and my remote is Super Lazy Coder's feathers generated app. So I'll add that. Ooh, get remote add, right. Get remote add origin. There we go. Oh man. Get remote add. There we go. All right. And then we will do get push origin master. Oh wait, get add everything. Get, let's do a get ignore. Get ignore generator. Getignore.io. So we're going to do code. And we'll do Visual Studio Code. We will do OS 10. We will do Node. We will do, what else do we want to do? Anything else? That should be good. Create. And we'll copy that. We'll do git. So I'm just going to do rm rdf.get git init git. Now we'll do a vim on .get ignore. Okay. Feathers generated added some stuff in here already, so that's nice. I will paste all the rest of this stuff in. Add the git ignore file first. Oh wait, git config global user email the lazy coder at lazycoder.com. Alright, shoot. Git config. And then we will add user name. I'll just put lazy coder. Lazy coder. Okay. Git commit am added git ignore file. Git add dot git status. That's annoying. No remove. Actually, I don't care about the launch file. That's probably fine. Okay. So we will git commit -a. No, we already did that. No, we didn't. Initial commit. Push origin master. So that will be React-Redux example. And that will be my initial commit into there. Did it not? Oh, origin does not appear to be a Git repository. So git push, no, git remote add origin and paste, not that. Oh. Git remote add origin of this URL here. Git push origin master. And then committed code. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, that was React that created that. Git ignore. React to create scripts. All right, so next thing to do is move my React-Redux example into the Feathers project, and then make a new directory for Feathers generated app, which I have a repo for now. So we will make a new directory. Actually, let's just do a git clone. We'll do git clone, blam, and clone an empty repository. That's perfectly fine with me. Okay, but now it is already connected. So to start with our Feathers app, we do Feathers generate app. Project name, Feathers generated app, yes. Description, tutorial on Feathers, JS, and Feathers generate. What folder should the source files live in? I like source, that's good. I like yarn, we'll pick that. We're going to take REST and real-time socket IO. So those will be our two transports. And as soon as Feathers is done here, I should say yarn. Come on, yarn. Now we'll do yarn start, and start it on the default 3030. So we have our React app here, and I'll take this one over and we'll do localhost 3030, and we have a Feathers app. Yay! The docs.feathersjs.com is quite a good resource. It doesn't always do everything you want it to do, but for the most part, 90% of the information you want in here is in here. Let's see. Client. So we want, okay, so Feathers/client and Feathers/IO/client. This looks good. We'll take this and we'll copy. And this will be the guts of, I think we're in the wrong folder now. Let's stop this one. We'll put this one in our React example. So we'll do yarn start. We're already in repos. We'll do cd Feathers and then Feathers generated app. So then we'll do yarn start here. Oh wait, while we're here, we might as well do a vim.get ignore, see what's in here, and just paste in a whole bunch of not that. Dang it. Undo. Let's go back. Take all of this junk here and paste all that in just to make sure that it doesn't put any of that other stuff out. Git add, git ignore, git commit am, updated, git, no, we'll just say added. Added, git ignore, git, don't need to push it right now. So we will go back to the Feathers app here, which isn't actually running, but yarn start there. Then we need to make sure that we are running Mongo. So let's take this terminal window over here. I always have a few terminal windows open. Mongo D, we'll run that, and looks like we're good. Robo3T to access my database. We will create a connection to the local DB. Shouldn't need any password but the default login or the default setup. Okay, and we seem to be good. Let's see, now we need to, well, let's test out our app. Let's go to Feathers, and we'll open the cold code file here. So essentially running code in here is just like telling it to open that directory. So we'll go into the Feathers, and then in here we have Feathers generated app. Now in generated app, all the business logic is in the source directory. Index is the first file it loads in, and the first thing that it does is load in the app file. So that's where all the Feathers stuff is done. So inside of app, you'll notice that it imports path for concatenation, path usage, serve fav icon, compression cores, helmet, body parser. So it's got a handful of, these are standard Express plugin pieces. The second section here is all the Feathers pieces. And then it's got the Feathers error handlers, and then it's got our independent files here. So we've got middleware services and app hooks are actually files. Middleware in this folder, services in this folder, and app hooks is this file right here. So as you can see, by default it adds a logger for after every service call, and a logger on every error as well. Close the welcome screen, don't need that. So in app, we create the Feathers, which is essentially the same thing as creating a Express app, but you use the Feathers function instead. And it just wraps the Express component with Feathers functionality. Then we configure our configuration, which is just Feathers configuration. We're using default here. And then we add cores, which is the cross-origin resource sharing. Helmet hardens the Express service by adding some specific headers. Compresses for compression on the transport. Then we've got body parser for JavaScript object notation. And then URL encoded, so it can parse the JSON objects and the URL encoded objects out of the body. We serve up the fav icon, and then we serve up the static public folder. We connect in hooks so that Feathers can actually hook into things. We connect in the REST command so that RESTful API calls are available, and then we connect in the socket. So socket adds the socket functionality through the Feathers client, and then we populate our middleware, and then we create and populate our services. Finally, not found and error handlers, and we add the app hooks all the way at the end. So let's go through what parts of these we will be working with. So middleware is generally where I would put business logic, stuff that I want to happen that is not necessarily related to a service, but will probably use services. Then we have services. So services are the components that you'll be serving up, and this will allow you to connect to the database and other business functionality from the outside and from the inside. And then your hooks here, these will allow you to put security logic in. It says, hey, don't ever send out this, don't ever send out that, that sort of thing. Each of your services will have hooks as well. And then we've got this default hook. So this is our logger from Winston. And then this is our logger hook. And what this does is it exports a function that returns a hook. And then based on that hook, creates some debug logouts for that information. All right. So first things first, we want to get some authentication in here, right? So we've generated the app. The next thing we want to do is feathers generate authentication. And what do we want to use for authentication? You can use any number of these. All you do is highlight them and press spacebar and it selects them. I'm just going to use username and password on the local. And then it says what is the name of the entity, the user entity service. And we'll use users. We don't have users yet, but we'll use users. We want it to be a Mongoose connection. I like Mongoose because of stringent schema connections. And then we'll connect to the database feathers generated app on Mongoose localhost. Everything looks good. It forces itself into the default config. It creates the source authentication. It forces itself into the app so it can configure authentication. Then it creates the service, the user service. It adds that user service, it forces it into the services index so we can import and configure that. Then it creates the user's model, the user's hooks, the user's filters, and ultimately the user's test as well. Yarn installs everything, and we should be ready to go. So let's go look at, oh, that's one thing I need to make sure we change. So you'll notice that after I generated that, lots of files changed, but nothing happened over here, which means that this project needs to be stopped and started. One of the first things that I try to do is go into, not the config, but the package file, and change node for node mon. That's just for my development usage, so when we run it as a server, we wouldn't necessarily run node mon, but we might, depending on if it's a dev server or not. And then run the application. You'll notice nodemon starts monitoring files. And now, if nodemon has some issue or hiccup, it will actually restart the application, or not hiccup, but like a file change or something like that. It'll throw an error. It'll show me that there's an error, where the error was, and then if I go fix the error in code, it should restart the application. So it's running, as we can see. I can refresh the page as much as I want. Always there. But more importantly, let's close all these. Don't save. Don't save. Don't save. So we'll build all these over again. So http:// local host port 3030. The first thing you have to do when you created the application is you have to create a user. So we'll do the user service, right? And instead of get, which will return nothing, first of all, I'm not authenticated, so I can't actually find users anyhow. But instead of get, we will do a post. And post will create a user. Now, I try to create a user with nothing, and it creates a user, and there's nothing attached to that user. So that's not the greatest thing. But if I go into the database, refresh, feathers generated app, collection, users, and you'll notice that I do have a user without an email or a password. So we'll delete this document because it's not useful. And then we'll go into our models. And in models, we have email and password, but none of them are required. So we're going to put required true and required true. So we'll save that. Ooh, what happened here? Did not like that. Oh, that's interesting. It's interesting that my code formatter would do that. All right. Anywho, so now I have the unique requirement, and the application should have restarted, which it did, restarting due to changes. And then I go to my poster again and I run it. And user validation, password path is required, email path, email is required. So it has an issue with our requirements, and it has reported some errors. Password is required. Email, path email is required. So this is by default out of the box. When you put the requirements on, it will send you back this multitude of errors because of missing requirements. So to fill in those requirements, we will go to the body tag, or the body tab. We will go and add application JSON for our type, and we will say email, and email is e@mail.com, and password is epass1, and we will send this out. And now I've created a user, and you'll notice that I have an email here, and I have an ID here, but I don't have a password, and that's by design. If you go into the users hooks, now you'll notice users was added here. That was the import that it pushed in here, and then it's pulling in the user service, and the user service is going to add hooks to this service from this file, and this file says that when I create a user, first of all, it hashes the password using this password hash function, which comes from Feather's authentication local. So that's hooks in here. And if you wanted to go look at what that actually meant, let's go in here. We'll look for what hash. No, it's probably in the defaults. So let's go into hooks, hash password. That's fine. So here's hash password. And hash password will use hash pw function, which comes from where. So it's using utils hash, and the hash pw equals options hash or hash default. So the hash default is going to be this function, and that uses bcrypt. So by default, our password authentication will be using bcrypt. But as you can see, I was able to follow from the hooks into the Feathers authentication node module and go hunt down what actual hash password did. And what it is it's a hook, it's a function that takes in one parameter of hook and then performs whatever it's going to perform on that. The hook contains your current user, the payload from your login. It contains the data, the request, the query, whatever stuff you're handing in, and whatever stuff is about to be sent out. Before is only items that were handed in because it hasn't gotten to the service yet, and after would have all the things that were handed in and all the things that were about to be passed out as well. Before will fire for every usage of a verb. All will fire for every verb, and then the individual ones would fire for the specific functions they were attached to. So if you did a create, it would fire before all, any hooks in there, and then before create, any hooks in there, and then it would run the service, and if the service returned successful, it would run after all, whatever hooks were in there. And this one, you'll notice that if params provider exists, so params provider is set, that means it's an external call. And what it does from there is hooks discard password. So this is why we didn't get a password, because we told it to discard the password. So if I comment this out and I go run this create again, first of all, I can't create the same user twice. Email already exists. But if I did e2@mail.com, I could then get e2@mail.com, and then I actually get the password passed back to me, which is not secure, which is why this was put in by default. All right, so our user service functionality. Let's create another service. We're going to say feathers generate service this time, right? And for feathers generate service, we'll do a mongoose service. What is the name of the service? We'll do messages. /messages sounds good. Does the server require authentication? Yes, it does. It creates the service. It pushes itself into the index.js. It then creates the messages model, hooks, filters, and test file. Now, all of that happened in this next folder. So each of these, so it added itself to the configure, right, on the index file. It then created the service, and creating the service required the feathers mongoose command. Feathers mongoose wants a model of schema type, so it created a model up here in the models. So here's messages. Messages takes in text by default. Users, we added that required attribute in there, but we're not going to put required in the messages. I guess it's already required. Great. But the messages service now pulls the paginate stuff out of the config, gives this object a name, hands it over its model, gives it its paginate settings, and then does an app use on /messages with the create service function from mongoose.js, which then creates our service. Now this just creates a function that takes in each of the verbs and then handles database functionality for each of the verbs. Then we pull the service back out by using app service. Now this is how you would attach to the service, whether you are on the client side or on the server side. You'll say app service, give it the service name, and it'll give you your service object, which you can then perform functionality on. We're going to access the hooks function, and we're going to hand it the hooks object, which is the messages hooks file. And so the hooks file is here. We told it that it was an authenticated service, so every request, before any request can happen, it has to run this authenticate, and it has to come back with a successful result or a resolved promise. And then, if service filter exists, then it runs the filter command with our filters object, which comes from this file. And our filters file is interesting. This is the old filter setup, which is kind of a little complex to get really running. It's been replaced with channels, which is in the new version, but it's not in this version. So I'll go over what filters does. So the connection here is the socket object. So when the socket is connected, the connected event happens, feathers hooks that, and then attaches a feathers object to the socket and attaches your user and your payload to that object. So connection.user._ID equals your user ID here. It would actually equal all this information about your user. And then the payload equals pretty much the same thing, only it might have other information about your login. But if we were to say we wanted whatever user created it to be the only one that could get the event. So this filter filters the events that are about to be called out. So say for instance you did a created, you could say, hey, I only want to know about an item that I created, right? So you could say user equals hook.params.user, and then if that was true, I would return the data. Otherwise, return null. So let's test this out. So if we go on to our React app, well, first of all, we have to get logged in. So let's log in. Okay, to do our login, we need to code in a login form into our Redux example. So the first thing I want to do is reorganize this a bit. I'm going to create a new folder for components. I'm going to take my app, put that into components, and I'll take my Redux actions, I'll put that into components. I should be required to pull my app from components app. And then in app, let's see, I need to go up one more level for logo. I need to go up one more level for store. And since I moved Redux actions, it's in the same place. So we'll save that, and we'll see what happens. Can't resolve modules UI actions. Can't resolve modules UI actions. Where am I at? Modules. Oh, that's going to be in Redux actions. And we need to go up one more directory for that as well. Compiling. Everything looks good. And then the page appears to be running. We'll run the command. Still got our Axios command coming across. So that's cool. All right, let's see. So we don't want to use Redux actions because that's just our Axios command. So I will take that out of my app. So no longer using Redux actions. We'll comment that out. We'll comment that out. Which should take it off the form. Good. Okay. Now I want to create a login form. New folder. Login form. And inside of login form, I will create a index. Let's see, what does this look like? Is this connected? It is. I'll take this one. I'm going to copy this guy. And I will create a duplicate in here. I'm going to change Redux actions for login form. I do not need those actions, but we'll leave those there for now. We're going to use a lot of this stuff again. So I will take, actually, let's see. So login form, we'll save that. And then on our app, we will import login form from login form. And then we will put in the place of this our login form. And we'll see what React says. And it's got errors. Console, what are my errors? Div cannot appear as a descendant of P. Okay, let's fix that real quick. So div cannot appear as a descendant of P. I don't want P, we'll just do another div. Div, div, okay. So that is fiv. Awesome. Okay. Div, did that fix them? Hey look, no more errors, okay. Alright, so my login form. We are going to gut this a little bit. We're going to create a form. And we will put our input in here. We'll put two inputs. We'll do line breaks in between them. So, and then we will put one more input. Type equals submit value. No, value equals login. These are all like self-terminating. There's no, you can't put anything in them anyway, so save that. Format, don't want this button on click. I will, no, we'll just leave that stringify there. And we'll say props.login data. So there shouldn't be any props login data, but it shouldn't error out because it's just a blank there. Okay, cool. Let's change this around a little bit, and we'll say table t head, don't really need a head, t body, and we'll say table row, table data, and we'll say what, username, and we'll say email. Table data again, we'll wrap this, we don't need the line break anymore actually, so we'll do table data, we'll close our table row, and we'll open a table row, and we'll do a table data, and we'll say password, table data, so I don't put all that on one line real quick. Table row, no, end table row, and then we'll say table row one more time. We'll do table data, call span equals 2. I think that's right. T body. Dang it. Table. Okay, format that. Save. And we've got email and password, our login here. Fantastic. So if we did whatever, oh, we didn't give it names. Let me do this real quick. Clear browsing data. The past day. We don't have any auto filled in. Okay. Ooh, what's the error here? Invalid DOM property call span. Did you mean call span? Oh, look at that. Call capital span. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, we need to change our commands. So we don't want to request add item. We want to request login. And we'll just put request logout as well. Connect those to dispatch. Those functions don't exist yet. So request log in. And out. Or out and in. Okay, so we're not getting it from modules UI actions. We're going to do from modules users actions. Module user actions. Okay, which does not exist yet, but we will work on that. So the next thing to do is to create our new module. So we'll create a new folder, not a new file, a new folder called user. Then we will create a new file for action, new file actions.js. We will create a new file for api.js. We will create a new file for reducers.js. And we will create a new file for sagas.js. Now in here, to get these guys working, I need to import, let's do UI, 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 user reducers, user sagas. We'll import user in here. We'll import UI dot user sagas. Okay. So we'll save that. All right. So now that we have imported our reducer and our sagas, we now need to create them. So we'll go over to actions. So the first thing that I usually do is just start copying stuff over. I get a simple module, and then I start putting a new version of that in. So we'll start with our, let's see, we're going to take add item. So every reference to add item that is capitalized, select them all. Okay. Add item, we've got them all selected, and we'll say login. So all of add item has now become login. We'll do the same thing for page data, any capitalized page data. Just holding down Alt while clicking with the mouse. And then log out. Press escape a couple times, get back to one cursor. And then request and receive become login. And page data becomes log out. So successfully changed all of that to the right requests. Then we'll grab API. So API on this one is using Axios. We are not going to use Axios. We are going to use feathers. We will get to building feathers in a moment. Let's go ahead and finish up the reducers. So we'll copy all of this, take our reducer, paste that in. Now we need to change the exported constant here. We're going to export out user. So this is the user reducer. And instead of add item, so this is, we'll select this whole thing. I'll press Command F, and then I press Alt Enter, and it selects all of them. And I will do receive login, and then I'll select this one, and I'll do Alt Enter, and I'll do receive log out. And that should have changed all of the ones that were used in the file. And then we'll do the same thing for these. So this is receive, and we'll do login. And then we'll do this next one, Alt Enter, and receive log out. Okay, so now we have all these items. We're going to gut these reducer actions. So we will just take, actually what we'll do is we'll take something very similar to this. Instead of being page data, this will be, this is the receive login. So we use it, we have two functions here, next and throw. Next is for when everything's going good, throw is for when there's an error. So we're going to say this is login data, and this will be log out data. And we'll do same thing here. We'll say login error, and we'll say log out error. Log in, log out, log in, log out. Everything looks good. So now we got to fix our sagas. So sagas, we'll copy all this out, and we'll paste all this in. We have two API functions that are here. We have login, and we have log out. We have this is going to be request login, and this is going to be request logout. So those are the actions that are taken. Then we have these call request add item. So I'm just going to take that portion, and I'll alt enter on that, and we'll say call logout. Logout. Okay. So this one function here, I'll just change that one to a lowercase l because my sagas I don't like to have named uppercase. And then we will do the same thing here. Request page data, Command F, Alt Enter, and then we'll say, oh, that was login, wasn't it? Oh, sadness. So we'll do this one login, and then lowercase l for login saga, and we'll do Command F and then Control Enter, no, Alt Enter, Alt Enter, and then we'll say log out, and then I'll come back to the beginning of this one, lowercase l. So these should all now connect properly. The API call that this one is trying to act on is the old API call that doesn't exist anymore. So we're not going to use this one. We are going to use logout. And then we'll actually copy this whole thing here. API if needed. We're going to use an API now. And what we'll do, actually we don't really need all that. We're just going to do the results. Results. Okay. And save. So now, when call login is taken, when request login is taken, it calls call login. Call login takes in the action. We take that action payload and we pass that to log in. Log in. We get the results from that, and we receive. We do receive add item, huh? Receive login. Oh, we didn't do these ones. Did I not? Holy cow, I thought I did. Maybe I undid too far. Receive login. Oh, wait. Receive. That was just annoying. Receive, alt enter, receive, login. This, alt enter, receive, logout. Okay. So, yield call login, takes the results, passes those to the receive login. When the request logout is taken, passes it to call logout gets the action. It takes the action payload and passes that to logout via the yield call here, takes the results from there and passes that to receive logout. And that looks good. So now let's get to the API. So to use the API, we have to connect to Feathers. And to connect to Feathers, we need to instantiate a Feathers client, connect it to the server, blah, 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 blah. So the easiest way to do that is, in my source directory, I will create a new folder, Feathers, and in Feathers I will create a new file called we'll call it index.js. So we'll just do index.js. Alright. Give me 1 second here. Alright, so in here we need to, well, first off we need to install all of our components. We're going to need to install, let's make sure we're in the right spot, cd react, and we're going to do yarn add feathers dash client. Yarn add feathers dash authentication, client, authentication client. There we go. And then we'll do yarn add socket dot io dash client. Then we'll yarn add feathers dash socket io. Is that right? Feathers dash socket io, yeah. And that should be enough. Then we'll go into this file and we'll say import feathers from feathers dash client. We will import auth from feathers authentication client. We will import IO from socket IO client. We will import socket IO, which is the feathers version, from feathers socket IO slash client. Actually, if we're going to go that path, let's install yarn add feathers. So we're going to add the feathers object rather than the feathers dash client object, and then we can do feathers slash client. So that'll be kind of the same thing. I wonder if there's a feathers authentication slash client. Feathers authentication. Okay. No, there's not. Oh well. Alright, then we need some options. We'll say var options equals the header is authorization. The path is authentication. The JWT strategy is JWT. The entity is user. The service is users. The cookie will be feathers dash JWT, and then the storage key will also be feathers dash JWT, and storage will be local storage, and that should cover our options. Now, since we're using ES6, we're going to want to export our socket and our client. So let's do export let socket equal IO, and then export let client equal, and we're going to run feathers, and we will configure with feathers. Wait, what am I configuring with? First, we got to do feathers hooks. Feathers dot hooks. Is that right? Feathers. Oh, that's the feathers client. I don't know if that one's on here or not. We'll find out. Configure feathers dot. No, not feathers dot. We'll do socket IO with our existing socket we just created. And then we'll configure auth with our options. I think we're configuring auth with options. Okay. Then then we can grab our services out. So then we'll say client service. Actually, we'll say since we've got our feathers object here, we'll just create all of our services right here. That way we have access to them. So we'll say export let message service equal. Actually, let's do user service first. So we'll say let users service equal client dot service. And we'll say users, and then we'll say export let message service equal client dot service messages. Okay, and then we'll do message service dot on created, and we'll just have the message that was created, and we'll do a console log a message was created, and we'll pass the message along. Okay, let's see how that looks. Now, to import this, really all we got to do is actually import the object anywhere. So we'll do it in our index file, maybe? Yeah, let's do it in the index file. So we've created the app, and then we'll say import feathers from /feathers. Save. And then on our client side, so we had no errors, but on our client side, hooks is not an option. Okay, so that is because we're using a different module, but that's okay. We can import feathers hooks directly, so we will yarn add feathers dash hooks. Okay, then we will, in our feathers file, we will import, before auth, we will import hooks from feathers hooks. And then we will just use the hooks function rather than the feathers.hooks function. There we are. And seems like we're working. Yay. Let's do a login command. That looks like it actually published, so that's fun. So to fix that issue, we will go to our components, our login form, and the form is just straight up submitting. So what we want to do is on submit, we want to use a function, this dot submit login. So we will say submit login equals, we're taking the E, and we will say if E and where the heck's and? There we go. Just can't see today. And type of E dot prevent default equals function. Then we will E dot prevent default. And then we will this.props.request login with this.state. Oh, let's fix this. So we're going to say state equals login form that's blank, and we'll say set state login form equals the existing login form and the value coming off of these text fields. So we will this.state.login form strategy local. So we also want to make sure that we have the local strategy used. Save. So we'll request login with email and password. So whenever the form is submitted, whenever these text boxes are changed, they will change the login form values for their name, email, and password. We'll also make sure to pump the strategy in there. Actually, I can just put this into my default, so I don't have to do that all the time. So my default has a strategy. And now, email and password will be changed whenever the text fields are changed. When I press submit, it will form the submit login here. Submit login will pass in this E. It will prevent default, so it won't actually post to the form. And then it will call this props request login, which we have attached with the bind action creators request login. Request login comes from modules users actions, and then in modules users actions, it will pump out this request underscore login event. Sagas will snatch it up, request login. It will take that and send that into the call log. Action calls the call login, which will then get us the results. The receive login gets called and pushed into our reducer. Our reducer then pumps its information back to us. So we're not going to use UI items. We're not going to use UI page data. We'll use login data, and we'll say user.login data. And let's see what we have. Props login data. Save. So now if we press login, we get an error. Our error is uncaught root saga at root saga. What? Oh. Uncaught to check call argument fn is undefined. Right. Our API does not have a login or a logout function, so we have to export those. Let's just copy these guys. Copy, paste, paste. We have a log out and a log in. And then command. Oh, it didn't refresh yet. Refresh. Command. Still the same jazz. Fn is undefined. Did I not save it? I most certainly did save it. Log in. Sagas. Call is calling login. Log in, log out from API. Log in, log out. Async functions. Yeah, maybe my React scripts didn't update. Okay. Any day now. Come on now. And log in. 404 not found. Hey, that makes sense. Okay, so it's trying to take in object. That is because we were passing in the login form data, and we are going to the piece here, and if URL exists, then it pumps in that URL. If it didn't exist, then it would pump in that. So we're just going to take that parameter out just to demonstrate that our API stuff is working. Okay, and login. Login? No? Ah, yes. Reducers? No. Sagas? Receive login. So, login, action payload, results. Login. Results is the whole bunch of stuffs. Okay. So that's actually working. Is it, however, going into what? Okay. Is it going into our reducer? So Redux, login, and we are getting stuff in login data. All right, user login data. Well, let's fix what we're getting now. So instead of calling login command with just Axios, we are instead going to import feathers, and we'll import client and socket from feathers. And we can actually also import we can also import the user service. And from the user service, well, we'll do a user create later, but for now, we will do client authenticate, I think, and then it's not URL, it's actually login payload, and this one would be logout payload, which actually would be nothing because there is no payload for logout. We'll put logout here as well. Client logout. So these got simplified up quite a bit. So now client authenticate comes in with login payload. It's going to pass the login payload along, and we should be able to put in our user. I guess we did have. We're going to create a new user. We will call him brand new.user, and the password will be bnu1234 exclamation question mark. Send. Brand new user created. Yay. Okay, so then we'll say brand new user. Ooh, cannot read properly login form of undefined. States? That's ridiculous. That's a coding issue right there. It's like I wasn't even a programmer or something. Login form. State. Okay, let's try this again. And we'll say brand new user. That seemed to work. And BNU1234 exclamation point. Login. Request login comes in. The action has local for the strategy, email, brand new user, password, BNU, blah, blah, blah. And the receive login comes back with an access token. Hey, look at that. So that should change my state. User, login data comes back with an actual access token. So now I should have been able to see my data. Login data, user login data, this.props.login data. Let's try this again. Brand new user, login, user login data, app state user login data, set, oh, ha 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 ha, ha ha ha. I was testing for the existence of a prop that was never going to exist. So let's try this again. Log in, and look at that, access token, thusly. And if we look in our application local storage, we'll see that Feathers JWT also contains that exact same token. That's because the login, when successful, takes the access token and places it in the Feathers JWT, because that is where we told Feathers to put it. So if I'd have told it to put it into some other, oh, that's the wrong one anyway. If I'd have told it to put it into some other JWT, and we try to log in, brand new user, 1, 2, 3, 4, and look, some other JWT. Ta-da! So, I'm going to put that back. Let's fix that too. Okay, so as it stands, I don't actually need both of these, so delete that one. We'll delete both of them. I log in, brand new user, ta-da, logged in, yay. Then we'll refresh the page and check our Redux, nothing. So no commands over our Redux. So we'll do our brand new user. We'll send our command, request login, receive login. Receive login comes back with our access token. We are now logged in. So as far as the socket is concerned, we're logged in as long as we've done that login portion. Oh, so there is one more thing that I wanted to get tested and possibly fixed. Let's so we log in successfully, but if we log in with a bad password, okay, that seemed to work. Let's refresh. We log in with a bad password, and we get uncaught at root saga, not authenticated, invalid login. So we can, in our modules, so user API, let's try adding the dot catch. Error, and we'll just return error. That didn't work out very well, did it? We'll return that, and then we'll see what happens. Brand new user, wait, login, and that was the right login. That doesn't work out. Login, choose the second one, login, and now we get an error. Well, it would have been an error, but it's not. So, but we do get notification that there's a Feathers error, not authenticated, all that good stuff. But what we want is we want for it to actually pass into, we want it to pass into the Redux errors portion, right? The throw portion. So what we can do is we can do an object.assign a new error with error.message, and then we can assign the second portion as the error. So this will assign the values that are in error to the object, the new error object that we're creating here, and return that in lieu of returning the actual error object, which is not actually an error. And we'll do the same thing for log out. At this point, when I try to log in with a brand new user, with the wrong password. The login happens. Invalid login actually occurs, but if I look in my Redux, login error is populated instead of the login data. So if you return an error, then that actually becomes, or it actually follows the different path on the reducer to go into the throw function rather than into the next function. Let's see, aside from that though, let's get back to a successful login. So let's restart here, brand new user, and then at this point, in our feathers, we did a message service on created. So now if we came over here and we do headers, we'll do, what are we at? We got users. We'll do localhost authentication, and then we will, actually let's do users. User, oh wait, we need to create over here. We'll do other new user. We'll create this guy, right? So we're not going to be the same guy. We'll do our authentication, and we will say it's a post, the body of application JSON, and we'll say strategy is local, email is other at new.user, and password is BNU 1234 exclamation question mark, and we'll run. Not authenticated. Ooh. Capitalization on the username is very important here. So we can actually fix that, but it's not fixed yet, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. Anyway, access token. So we now have our access token. We will place this into our headers for our authorization header. Oh man, I didn't want to do that. Authorization header. We'll just paste that in. Now by default this is supposed to be a bearer token, but Feathers doesn't care whether you put bearer there or not, so I just paste the token in manually. And then conflict, email, other new user, oh, I'm trying to create, that's not going to work. So I'm going to do a get users, and now I can see all my different users and whatnot. I will do messages, and messages comes back with nothing. So we're going to post a message, and we're going to do a new body. I'll just leave this stuff here, but I'll do text and hello Moto, and we've created a message. Check our console. We got no message. All right, log in. Create another message. No. Let's do it again. No, nothing. So let's check it out. Oh. Services. Filters. Let's go ahead and take this out, and we'll return data, right? So disconnected real quick. And now we will send our object, and look, we got it was created, right? That's because this time it didn't have to have the user object the same one. Therefore, any user could have done. Now let's do user ID ._ID. So let's take this. Actually, if we take this token right here, copy that, and then we just use that in our authorization header and press send. Hook params user, connection user. Let's see. So we are logging in, brand new user, log in, got a good token, okay, and we send, no activity. Okay, so let's find out what's going on here. Console log user. Let's see, we'll do connection.user, and we'll do console log hook.params.user. And then we'll do another one real quick. We'll just do hook.user. See if that's discrepancy here. Let's see what happens. Run that. Clear, 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 clear. Whole bunch of clear duty, clear, clear. And send. Connection user. Oh, right. Right. Because this is actually an object. And so the objects don't actually equal each other. So now they should equal each other, and they do. Even though I'm logged in on a different one, but because my user ID is the same when it's converted to a string, the both of them match, even though I created on a different actual login. So this essentially is limiting me from being able to see the messages that I create. And then we can go like this. User, I think user has an email address, right? Email. User email. So we could easily just use user email. Hey, it doesn't like that. What happened? Crashed. Writing the file changes before starting. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's not right. Let's put a parentheses in there. There we go. And she's back. Go back to there. Press that command, and it looks like it connects in. Cool. Let's do a refresh real quick. And I press send, but nothing comes back because we're not actually logged in. We will log in, and then I send again, and we get the notification. So that's how filters works. For instance, if I wanted to make it so that my message also had a 2, my code, this one. Okay, so if I want to make it so that my message also had a 2, I would say 2 type string. We won't do required. We'll just say message 2. No big deal. Oh, that's so annoying. Okay, so message 2. We're logged in again. Now, Socket will actually connect you back up and relog you in if you were logged in. So even though I got disconnected from the server because I was restarting and rebuilding, it actually reconnected me up and relogged me in again. We will sign in, we'll run our command, and that seems to work. Now, if I say 2, and I go to, what is the email address? We'll say to brand@new.user. If I want to save. Send, and now I've created one that also has a 2 value, and it had to be in my schema for me to be able to get the 2 here, so that's why I put it in. But in my filters, I can say so if it was mine, I can see it. Otherwise, if we'll say data.to, then we'll return data. So if I am listed as the 2 member as well, what is your problem with that? Unexpected token, else, else if. So now if I am the originator, I'm the person that did it, or I am being the one sent to, then I will also get it. So we'll do brand new user here, but we're going to come over here and we're going to log in with our other user again, and we're going to take that token and we'll place that in our headers for authentication. So we are not the same person that sent it, but we should, after logging in, be able to see the message. And there we go. Now if I sent it to someone else, that is not where the data is. There it is. If I sent it to somebody else, ran the user 2 and sent it, it would not come to this person because they are not listed as the 2. So as you can see, filters gives you the ability to say you don't want to send something. Let me take these logs out. So connection, user, and hook params user are the same object. For the user that originated it. If you are logged in on 2 different places, the objects won't be the same, but they will contain the same data. And since the email is a string and it's unique, you can actually use that to tie by. And then you can also say that if the data to, so this value is sent to this specific person, then they'll be able to receive the message as well, and so it would emit the created event for them as well. Okay. Now let's take a look at middleware. Let's see what a generated middleware looks like. Feathers generate middleware. What is the name of this express middleware? Custom middleware. What is the mount path? We'll just leave it star. I don't know what that exactly means. Okay, let's see what we did. Middleware index, use custom middleware, and then custom middleware becomes options equals blank. Custom middleware request response next. So this is just a standard express middleware, and you can do pretty much anything that you could do with any other express middleware right here. But that's not really what I usually do. I want to be able to get some service business logic in here. And so to put service business logic in a middleware object, I have to gain access to the services. So in my middleware, which is a little bit different than this, let me pull one up here. In my middleware, I will export the function, and I'm not really worried about the options. We will say, actually, let me look at what it puts in here. Okay, so in my middleware, I will actually pass the app, right? And then I will export a function that takes in app, and the first thing that I need to do when I'm trying to gain access to all the services is attempt to pull them out of the app. Now, where middleware is currently at, you can't get to those because they haven't been created yet. So I use a function, init, and I just init with the app again. And then I will set a timeout to call, set a timeout with a arrow function that just calls init with app. And then I'll do that in, say, 10 milliseconds. Set timeout. Okay. So, and the only reason for that is because the app hasn't finished going through its cycle, it has not created its services. And if you haven't created your services, you can't access them. If you can't access them, then what's the point of the middleware in the first place? So in my init, I will take let message service equal app.service messages, right? And then if not message service, then I will set timeout again, and I will just call init again with app in another 10 milliseconds. So what that actually does is it allows me to gain access to the services in this middleware and gives me a pick point, but also allows me to use the functionality of Feathers. So it's not just middleware for Express. This is my position for middleware for anything that I would do. So you can use the Express middleware that was default created with your middleware generator. Enter custom middleware here. Remember that in Express the order matters. So instead of just adding middleware that Express would use, I'm going to add any type of middleware, like all types of middleware. And this doesn't really add anything to the app use. I could add something to app use, but I'm not actually doing that. So for instance, so within this, my custom middleware function, custom middleware. Now, after I've made it past this section into the else portion, then now I have access to my messages, and I can say message service.on created, and I can perform some action based on the message being created here. So message created. I could then, for instance, now the message is created. Well, that just created a message, but what type of message is it? Maybe this message has some sort of identifier that says, hey, I wanted to get a notification when somebody read this or something, right? So we could have an ID come back to this person and say, I want to be able to notice when some message happens here, so that when this is created, we'll say the owner, right? So we didn't add an owner. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to our messages model. We'll say owner is of type object ID. Now it's going to be schema.object ID. Object ID. And it is required true. Okay. God, I hate that. That's annoying. That's really annoying. I'm going to have to figure out what does that at some point. But now, when I create this element, I need to be able to attach my specific user to it. So who owns it? Well, we can actually go into the messages hooks and we can import authentication. Yeah, I think that's right. Associate to current user, is that right? Oh, no, I don't think so. I think that's, no. Not quite the same. So that's feathers authentication dot hooks. I need feathers authentication dash hooks, which I don't know that I have. Oh, I do. Okay, cool. And we will use associate. No, maybe I don't have it. Let me just go make sure it's installed. Yarn add feathers authentication hooks. Feather authentication is fantastic. Feathers authentication hooks. There we go. Oh well, it's associate current user. Why don't you like this? Never used. Okay, so on create, so before create, we will call associate current user, which takes in an object parameter of configuration, and we'll say the ID field is underscore ID. So let's do underscore ID, and the owner field is owner. Okay, so we'll place those in. Now, when I create a message, we'll post to create message. When I create a message, owner, path owner is required. Oh, awesome. They did not take those. Associate current user, ID field. Oh, haha, haha, as. And look, now we have an owner. So with owner, I could feasibly get some notification back to that user that something was updated. So then I could say, put some new service piece in. We'll say notify service. And we would create a notification with owner and whatever. We would create a notification here. That would notify them that this message notification was created, right? And they could be listening to the onCreated event for notifications. And then we could say message service.on updated. And if owner, so we'll say message.owner. So if we took message.owner, we could then reattach that notification service and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that this message you were looking for or you were looking at was updated. And so we could feasibly create a middleware service that took in a message when it was created, attached a new notification object to the notification service, and then whenever this thing was updated, we could say, hey, we got an update. Let's go see if we have a notification. So we'd find it in the notification services. Yes, we do have a notification. Well, let's update that notification. So he may not be listening to the updated events on this to find out when it was created or updated, but we may be able to connect in and send him a direct notification. Or for that matter, I believe you can use app.socket Is it app socket? Let's see. Feathers docs.feathers.js.com. API socket.io. App configure. Socket emit. No. App.io. So I could get the app.io object and then iterate through it. However, I would use socket.io and essentially get attached to the user that was wanting those notifications and then send them a socket event manually. So that's completely possible as well. But effectively, when you hop off the main thread and call your init after the service has been created, you detect that your service is coming out of here, then you have access to all the regular service events and can create a middleware based on those. So let's see, actually, let's do a console log. Message was created, and we'll just pull message. So yes, lint fix auto fixables. Okay, can't fix console log. It's not supposed to be there. But all right, so now, well, we have a bug. What happened here? App use requires a middleware function. Okay. Uno momento. Ah, yes. I was not performing an app use. Let me take that app use out. So, if you wanted to return an actual middleware function, you could use app use. But since we're just attaching the middleware to the app, we can just call our function manually. It's not actually put into the middleware and should work properly at this point. And we will do a post. So I'm going to clear all these. Clear, 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 and clear. And we will create a brand new message. Hello, Feathers server. Click. And the message was created. It says, hello, Feathers server. And ultimately, on the client side, a message was created that says, hello, Feathers server. So as you can see, the service on created event looks exactly the same in our server when we pull it out of the app. So we're pulling this out of the app service, right? As it does in our client. When we pull it out of the client service. So the client and the server function very, very similarly. The server actually has a lot more business logic built into it, but the client gives you access to the exact same functionality. And if you wanted to use REST, instead of doing the socket.io as your transport, you would just change this to REST. And then you would have a RESTful API rather than a socket API. Unfortunately, I don't think that you can get the service events unless you have a real-time API, which is what sockets is for. What else? Is there anything else? I think that about covers what Feathers does out of the box.